see how this works. Share screen. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see my screen there. And so this is pretty much the same spreadsheet that I used to introduce this, and I'm just going to go through these functions here, financial calculations and Excel functions. Actually, I'll make it a little bit bigger. Just to make it easier to see. There we go. And so I'm going to go through these again. I introduced simple interest and compound interest, and hopefully you remember what that's all about. So I'm just going to go through the rest of these. So there are 6 of these time value money functions that you're going to need to know how to use. Future value, present value, interest rate, N per or number of time periods, payment amount or PMT, and then this one all the way at the bottom, IRR, which stands for internal rate of return. And I will talk about that a little bit. I don't think I even introduced that topic when we first talked about this 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to go through a few examples here. And again, these are all functions in Excel. These, when you put equal sign and like FV, that means you're telling Excel that you want it to calculate something in a particular way. And so if you go ahead and do that, say right next to the cell that says equal FV, if you type in that exact same thing in that cell, equal FV, and then bracket, you should get these prompts. See these prompts below here? It says rate, N per, PMT, PV, and type. Those are essentially prompting you to put in certain numbers or put in certain figures. And rate is the interest rate. So that's what's bold. That's what it's looking for right now. If I put in an interest rate, let's say 0.1, and then I hit comma, it goes on to this next variable that it's looking for, which is N per, the number of time periods. So I put in number of time periods, 12. I'm just putting in random numbers here to show you how this works. Hit comma, and then it bolds up the next thing. It's sort of telling you what to expect there. PMT, I'm going to put in 0 there. And then PV stands for present value. So what this particular function is calculating is future value. And so based on these inputs, the interest rate, the number of time periods, any payments, and the present value of what you have, it's going to tell you what you'll have in the future. So I'm going to put, say, I don't know, 100 in there, which you can think of as $100. So we don't have to put in anything for type. So for all of these variables, there will be an option to put in type, but we're not going to deal with that. It's has something to do with whether or not you're putting the money in at the beginning of time period or at the end of the time period, but we're just going to leave it blank, and it's going to default to the end of the time period, which is just fine. So you just need to enter 4 of the variables there. So I've entered them up through PV, and so now all I have to do is hit enter right now, and it should give me a figure here. So it gives me this figure of 313.84, and that's negative, so negative brackets there. And it's negative, again, because when I put in this formula up here, I put in $100 positive. But when you're using these formulas, the way to think about positive and negatives in money is that if you put in a positive, that means you're expecting the money to come to you. If you put in a negative, that means you're expecting the money to go out. Okay, so in this equation, the way I entered it with a positive 100, that was saying I am going to, that money is going to come to me. And that's really not what I wanted to say. I wanted to say, if I invest, if I give out, not give out, but if I invest $100 at 10%, which is 0.1, for 12 years, how much will that give me? And so what I can do is I can just go back in here, and up here on this function line, you can edit any of these things, just like you'd edit a text in Word or something. I'm just going to put a negative in front of that 100. So now instead of a positive 100, I put in a negative 100. And so then if I hit enter, it gives me this positive number. It changes that value to a positive. So that's really what I was looking for. So what I just figured out was that if I invest $100 and it returns 0.1 or 10% for 12 years, how much will I have at the end of 12 years? My future value will be $313.84. And again, this is assuming we're compounding it every year. So every year you're making a little bit more because you have more principal each year. Okay. So that is future value. The other way we can do this, and this is really the way that for all sorts of reasons I'd recommend using these functions, is instead of typing these numbers in here directly, you can also fill in cells and then just link to the cells. So if I wanted to, I'm going to delete that. If I want to do the same thing here, using the same numbers, I can put in rate, which is 10%. So I put in 10 there because that's already a percent. I don't want to put in 0.1 or it's going to, oh, actually, that's fine. So it's 10%. And number of time periods, again, it's going to be the same, 12. Future value, I don't know. That's what I want to figure out. Present value is, again, negative 100. Payments are 0. So I have just put these in 4 different cells. And what I can do now is I can start out the same way and go equals FV, left bracket. And then again, it's prompting me here. But instead of typing these in, I'm just going to click on them. Click on the cells that have that information. So it's asking me for rate. I'm going to click on the cell that says 10%. And then instead of putting 10% in there, it puts the cell in there. See, this is column C, row 12. So that's what C12 means. And then I put comma. Now it's asking me for NPER. I'm going to click on that. D12, column D, row 12, comma. Looking for payment. Click on that. G12, same thing. And present value, again, I click on this. F12. The other cool thing about doing it this way is that you can see, it sort of color codes, at least in my version of Excel, it color codes what cell is linked to which number here. So the blue cell is the first, the rate. The green cell is the second, NPER, and so on. So I've done those, typed those 4 in, and now, assuming math didn't change in the last 5 minutes, this should come up with $313.84. Let's see. Yes, math did not change. So, so this is a way that I would encourage you to use these functions. It makes it a lot easier, and it also makes it easier to see like the variables that you're using as you're working with this, if you have them in cells that you can also see. And it also means that if you want to change things up and say, oh, you know what, I was wrong, I didn't have $100, I had $500, what does that mean? Then all you have to do is go over to this cell right here, and you change it, and you hit enter, and this thing over here recalculates based on that. So you don't have to go back into this formula and change it, you just got to change it here. So it's sort of a nice way if you want to play around with numbers and see, you know, different returns on investments or different like payments for a car payment or a house payment. This is a great way to do it because then you can change the values, your assumptions basically, and the function will just automatically change it based on that. So if you like math, it's sort of a cool thing. Even if you don't, it's sort of a cool thing. So that's future value. Does this make sense? Anybody have any questions right now about what we're doing or how this is working? Or the other nice thing about this, and I say this somewhat facetiously, but somewhat seriously too, is that if you're able to use some of these functions, especially when you're looking to get a loan or to look at different investments, if you have some money you want to invest in, it allows you to have a very good conversation, informed conversation with a banker or a financial advisor. And my dealings today with bankers lead me to want to strangle them. And so it's nice if you actually have numbers behind it and you can say, you know what, even though you're the banker, you don't know what you're talking about and you are too big to fail, but you're failing anyways. That's just my big bank joke there. But it provides you some really good information and artillery if you need to argue with banks or financial advisors. So my little 2 cents there. Okay, so let's do some examples. I'm going to do some examples here and just show you how these different functions can be used, and then I'm going to let you practice with an in-class exercise using these. So we'll do future value. I sort of showed you how you could use this to determine how much money you would have after a certain period of time if you invested it at a certain percentage rate. So another way to use this, if you're in the business world, is if you say, all right, my company's sales this year were $100,000, and this is sort of like a projection exercise. I expect my company's sales to increase by 10% a year for the next 5 years. If that's the case, then what will my company's sales be in 5 years? Okay, so this is useful for people who own a business or making projections for loan purposes to determine what their income might be in a certain number of years. So I can use the future value in the same way to figure this out. So if I say, all right, they're $100,000 right now. So that's I'm going to delete all these cells here that I just did. $100,000 right now. That's present value. That's right now. That's what present value means, right now. $100,000, right? That's what my sales are right now. I expect them to grow at 10% a year. We're going to use 10% again over here. And that'll happen for 5 years, I'm pretty sure. 5 years. That's what I know. And so if I go back here and I type in equals FV bracket, left bracket, and I do my rate, comma, N per time periods, comma, payment, which is again 0, but you need to select it anyways. And then present value, which is that. Again, you don't need to worry about type. And then I hit enter. It tells me name. Why does it tell me name? Oh, because I accidentally hit an extra slash at the end there. Fix that. And it tells me that in 5 years, if my sales grow at 10% a year, and right now I'm selling $100,000, I should be selling $161,000 in 5 years. So that's one way you could use another way you could use future value. This is a good one. If you want to save for retirement, and actually, you know what? I'm just going to leave this equals FV there since we now are all familiar with how to use it. And I'm just going to delete these cells. So now it's just a question of, do you know what information to put where? So I'm going to read this one off, and then you're going to tell me what information I should put in which cell. So here's the scenario. You plan to save $500 a month for the next, gosh, I wish I was doing that, $500 a month for the next 20 years for retirement. If your average rate of return is 6%, how much money will you have for retirement? All right, so where do I put 500 bucks in this equation? In any of these 5 cells here, rate, N per FV, PV or payment?
Payment.
Payment, I agree. So this is the first time we use payment. Payment is something that's either coming to you or going out on a regular period of time. So car payments, home loan payments, things like that. And so we're going to put $500 into retirement. So that's going to be negative because it's moving away from us. So that's negative 500 for the next 20 years. Where does 20 go? 20 years.
N per?
N per, yes, thank you. And then, it's actually calculating as we go along, even though we haven't given it all the information, which is sort of funny.
I thought you said you were doing 500 a month. Is it 500 a year or 500 a month?
Thank you. Very good point. Okay, so here's the deal. It is 500 per month, and this is something we have to pay attention to, which I didn't do. We're going to be doing things either annually, every year, or monthly, usually every month. So we're going to be doing 500 a month, which means if it's 20 years, how many months is in 20 years? Math in your head.
240?
240, yes, exactly. So we put 240 there instead, okay? So that's the number of time periods. Thank you for that correction. So we have 500 a month for 20 years. The average rate of return yearly is 6%. So what do we put in the interest rate? What do you think?
$6%?
No. You sort of put 6% in there. What I would do, but see, 6%, it's 6% a year. So since we're using these months for time periods, that's what these 240 represent. We have to make an equivalent interest rate on a monthly basis. So what do? Take 0.06, which is 6%, and divide that by the number of months in a year, which is 12. So that way you get your average monthly interest. It should come out to like 0.0 or 0.5%, I think. Yes, my head works. So if we're doing this, and actually, well, I'll change this up in a second, but this is definitely something you want to keep in mind, whether you're calculating something for months or years. When we get down here and start talking about payments, usually we're going to be talking, if we're talking about a car payment or a home loan payment, it's going to be monthly. So whatever time period you're using, both the rate has to correspond to that. So if we're doing a loan at 6% a year, and you want to find out the monthly payment, then you have to divide that 6% by 12, just like we did here to calculate the monthly payment. So what we just figured out up to here is if you put away $500 a month for 240 months or 20 years at 0.5% per month or 6% a year, you'd have $231,000 at the end of that 20 years. Not bad. Let's see what it would be if, so this means it's compounding it every month, right? Every month we're compounding it. That's what this time period means. That's the number of times that this is compounded. So let's say it was only compounded every year. If it was compounded once a year as opposed to once a month, do you think that this amount, this 231, is going to be higher or lower if I change that compounding periods? You got a big, I agree. It's going to be lower. Let's see what it is. So I'm going to change this up to be years. And so we're going to change the rate to 6%. And we're going to change the number of time periods to, what did I say, 12? 20. My brain really isn't working today. Enter. Oh. But this is the other thing we need. See, if we change time periods, we got to change everything. We also have to change the fact that it's not $500 a year. It's going to be 500 times 12 per year because we're calculating this on a yearly basis now, not on a monthly basis. So we got to change this to 500 times 12 is $6,000. So then we go. So it's a little bit less, from 231 down to 220. So it's the same amount of money that you're putting out there that you're investing at the same interest rate, but when you compound it more frequently, you make more money because it's compounding it's compounding 12 times a year as opposed to just once a year. So that's something to keep in mind. Whenever you're looking at an investment, you want to see something that compounds as frequently as possible. So, okay, so that was calculation to figure out retirement. Again, you can change these numbers up if you can't put away $500 a month. Maybe you can put away $200 a month. So 200 times 12 is 2,400, 88,000 at the end of 20 years at 6%. So again, it's sort of nice to, like, if you want to do some of your own financial planning, you can use these as really good tools to figure out what you might have in the future based on that. So, okay, that's future value. Any questions about that, future value?
But to get the 6% rate, you have to do stocks, and third quarter was painful. You have stocks, don't you, Steve? Did you lose a goodly amount for through September?
Everybody lost a lot of money in stocks. The college foundation lost a good amount of money in August and September in the stock market, because in general the stock market went like this, right? And unless you have stockbrokers that can predict the future, which many of them try to tell you they can, you're going to be experiencing what the stock market did. So yeah, it didn't. But on average, over the last 20 years, I think the stock market has returned like 7 or 8%. So if you look at the long term, so this number is just the percentage rate is just a guess. It's not a guarantee. I mean, at one time in the 80s, savings accounts were actually earning like 11% interest. But that's also when the inflation rate was at like 18% a year. So, or at least it was very high. So it just depends on what you're investing in, how long it's going to be in there, and what sort of the historical average is. And so this is, yeah. So if you don't think you can make 6%, maybe you can only do think you can do 4%. You can change that also, and then that will change this amount here too. So yeah, these assumptions here, at least especially the rate assumption, is just something that you can't control, and so you just got to give your best sort of guesstimate at it. Okay, so let's move on to present value. So PV, or present value, is calculating what something is worth today based on future returns, or based on a sequence of cash flow that you'll get in the future. And so a good example of using present value would be to calculate what it's worth to buy, say, a U.S. Treasury bond today. So unlike stocks, bonds are basically, they're guaranteed that you're giving somebody a loan, whether it's the government, a company, corporations issue bonds, GE, General Electric issues bonds, Apple issues bonds, or local county governments also issue bonds. I'm not aware of any tribal governments that issue bonds. I'm sure they probably could. But basically, it's a way for a government or a business to raise money. And really, it's like a promissory note. They say, if you give us $1,000, we promise in the future that we'll give you $1,200 or something like that. But typically, the way bonds are priced are, they will pay out a certain amount in the future, and based on that, and based on what the investors, what kind of return they want to see, the price that you will pay for that will go up or down. So because I can't explain that very well in a narrative, let me show it to you in numbers a little better. So present value. Let's say it's a U.S. Treasury bond, and those come in, like, you can buy a 1-year bond, you can buy a 30-day T-bill, but the longer term ones are 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 year, and 30 year. So let's say we're going to buy a 10-year Treasury bond, and so that means, whoops, rate is not 10, that's for sure. I'm going to leave rate blank for a second. We'll come back to that. Number of time periods. So this will be 10. We'll do this on an annual basis. So 10, let me just start over. Put 10 here. It's number of time periods. Future value. So let's say this bond is worth $1,000 in 10 years. So that's what they do. They say, we'll give you $1,000 in 10 years. How much are you going to give us now? That's what you sort of got to figure out. So The future value is $1,000, and this should be positive because it's coming back to you. They're going to be giving you something. The present value is what we're trying to figure out. We're going to assume there are no payments right now. I'll talk about that in a second. And then it comes to this question of the rate. What is the rate? Well, really, when you're calculating present value, this is what you would want to see as a return on the investment. So if you buy a U.S. Treasury bond for 10, and you're going to hold it for 10 years, what average rate of return would you like to see on that? So let's just say it's, I think right now, 10-year bonds, I've been paying a lot of attention to this because I'm refinancing a house, and the refi rates are sort of tied to U.S. Treasury bond rates, and so they fluctuate up and down with those. So anyways, I think right now that they're at like 2.7%. We'll just say 3% to be easy about it. So we'll say 3% is what we want to see as a return on a bond. And so then you would ask, well, if I get $1,000 in 10 years and I'm expecting 3% rate of return on average, how much should I be willing to pay for it right now? Well, let's find out. That's what present value is for. So we go present value, and again, we're just prompting, so I'm going to link to these cells: rate, comma, NPER, comma, payment, which is 0, comma, future value, hit enter, and it says right now you should be willing to shell out $744.09 if you want to average 3% return for the next 10 years. That will basically, if you turn this around, I'm not going to do that right now, but if you turn this around, it would be like investing $744.09 in a certificate of deposit at 3% for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, you'd have $1,000. It's the same thing, but it's working backwards. It's working back from the future to the present value is called discounting. Working forward to the future value is called compounding. So just some terminology there for you. So $744.09 is what you would be willing to pay. The way that how are bonds how are bond prices determined in the market? They're not based on a calculation like this. How are the prices of bonds determined in the market? I'll give you a hint. It's just like the prices of stocks.
The reputation of the municipality that's offering them, maybe?
Yeah, yeah, to some degree. Well, yeah, I mean, it gets back to sort of the intrinsic value, market value thing. It's based on the perception of investors, and so it comes down to supply and demand. How many people want to buy the stock based on the reputation of the government, how creditworthy the government is, or the company, and how many other people want to buy that bond, excuse me. And so it will cause the bond prices to go up and down just from supply and demand, from people wanting to sell it and buy it and what they think about that particular bond, that particular company. So just like future value, you can change up your assumptions here in the rate, the NPER, and the future value to determine how that would affect what you should be willing to pay. Like if you say, oh no, I really want 4% out of that, hit 4% here. If I put in a 4% rate here and change it from 3 to 4%, is my price going to go up or down, my present value? If I'm expecting a bigger return for the next 10 years, would that cause my present price to go up or down? Anyone? It should cause it to go down because I'm expecting a bigger return and I'm still only get $1,000 in 10 years, right? Let's see, yes. So it goes down to $675. So because my future return doesn't change, I'm still just going to get $1,000 in 10 years. If I expect a larger percentage, average percentage return, then I need to pay less right now to achieve that, right? Because the difference between $675 and $1,000 is basically the return on your investment for the next 10 years. Okay, so that's present value. So one type of bond will pay a fixed amount at the end, and that's it. Other types of bond will pay you that amount at the end, the principal amount, and they will also pay you what they call coupons. In this case, let's say they pay them every year, and a coupon is just like an interim payment. It's like a little, it's like you're buying, the $1,000 is the 20-piece chicken McNugget, and your coupons are the extra nuggets that you get when you buy the 20-piece. So instead of 20, they're giving you 24. So over the next 4 years, you're going to get one nugget a year. And given how many preservatives are in those things, they will last 10 years, I guarantee you. So we're going to say that our little nuggets are going to be $20 a year. We're going to get an extra $20 a year coming back to us. So if I type in 20 here, because it's coming back to me, it's going to be positive. That means I should be willing to pay $837 versus $675. Why? Because for the next 10 years, they're paying me 20 bucks a year. So you get like a check in the mail every year for 20 bucks. And at the end of 10 years, you get your $1,000 too. So that means that given that $1,000 in 10 years, given the $20 a year for the next 10 years, and your expectation of a 4% rate of return, you should be willing to pay $837.78 for that investment. Okay. All right. Any questions about present value? No? Okay. Moving on. I'm just moving down the list here of these different functions here. So rate is interest rate. It's going to calculate an interest rate based on a certain assumptions here. So I'm going to start with the assumptions here. Oh, so this is the other way so this is maybe what you would do if you bought a Wall Street Journal and saw the prices of certain treasury bonds, the actual prices of them, like this number right here, $837. You might want to calculate what does that mean? What is the equivalent interest rate based on that price? So for interest rate, that's what we can use that for. So again, we'll use a 10-year treasury bond, just like we did the other time. So our NPER is 10. It's going to pay us $1,000 in 10 years. And the current market price is $613.40. So that would be, the current price is present value. So, excuse me, I'm going to put, and so in this one, we're putting both future value and present value. And one always has to be positive and one has to be negative. They both can't be positive, because if your present value was you getting $100 in, let's say, and your future value was you getting $1,000 in, Excel would blow up. It wouldn't know what to do with that. And so present value is what you'd be willing to pay for that. So let's say today that this bond, this 10-year bond that pays you $1,000 in 10 years, is selling for $613.40. So I'm going to put in negative 613.40 is my present value. And we're going to say that right now, at least, this doesn't have any yearly payments. You won't get anything aside from the $10,000. So what is the rate? Let's find out. So we go equals rate, left bracket, and then we can link these things in here. NPER, comma, payment, comma, PV. I like how it highlights these things, so you just sort of like following a recipe. FV, and then this one has type or guess. Don't worry about either of those. You just enter these four. Enter. So based on the information I just gave it, a price of $613.40 today for a 10-year, for a bond that in 10 years will pay me $1,000. That's the equivalent interest rate of 5.01%. So as this price fluctuates up and down, you can, it will recalculate what that interest rate is, just like the other one. So let's say instead of 613, it was selling for 695 today. So negative 695 Now it's only earning 3.71%, right? Because you're paying more for it right now and you're earning the same thing in 10 years. So the average interest rate you're earning is less. And you can do the same thing with this as we did with present value. If you have a bond that has like pays you a certain amount of nuggets every year, let's say this one pays you 30 nuggets a year. So you hit 30 in here, and that really increases the interest rate. It goes from that you'd be earning, it goes from 3.71% to 7.3% on average. Because if you think about it, if you get paid 30 bucks a year on an investment that you pay $700 for, that adds like almost 5% of the value just on this alone. So again, you can change these numbers around and see how that calculates out. So that's interest rate. Any questions about that? So just the other thing to know as far as being able to use this interest rate one, if you're thinking about investing in like a bond, and there are maybe 2 or 3 out there that you're investing in, and one is like matures in 6 years, which means you're going to get paid in 6 years, and another matures in 3 years, and you're going to get paid in 3 years, and another matures in 10 years. How are you going to compare all those investments? Well, what you could do is you could just plug in the numbers here, and plug in different NPERs, and it will give you an average interest rate, which you can then compare those investments based off the average interest rate, right? So let's say I have a bond. Let's say there's this option right here of having a bond that will pay me $1,000 in 10 years at a cost of $695 right now. Let's say there's a bond out there that has 7 years left. That currently is, oh, well, we have to pay attention, I guess, to what so that's 3.71%. Remember that number. Let's say we have one that's maturing in 7 years. That's costing $805 right now. Which one would be better? The first one, because the first one was earning 3.71%. This one is earning 3.15%. So you can compare 2 different bonds with 2 different lengths of maturity. You could even compare 2 different bonds with 2 different future values, because it brings it all back to an average interest rate. And really, that's from an investing point of view, you just want to see that number as high as possible, assuming everything else is the same, assuming the risk level is the same. So, and that's the other thing to consider about both stocks and bonds. Some of the reasons why bond prices, like rates of return here, are really high is because it's a fairly risky company or country. For instance, right now, the United States, you can buy a 10-year bond that may be like 2.7%. That's what the equivalent that you'll earn. But if you can even find a 10-year bond from the Greek government right now, they're probably paying like 14% or something like that. It's because the Greek government is having some serious financial difficulties, and there's a big question about whether or not that government will be even solvent, won't go bankrupt, for instance, in 2 years. So you got a much higher risk level there that you might lose your money. And that's the risk that you're looking at here, is losing your money. So the riskier the investment, the higher the return. The less risky the investment, the safer the investment, usually the lower return. That's what you'll typically see.
Steve, you know how they always have school bond elections?
Mm-hmm.
Can you actually go to your city and buy a school bond, or is that offered through some intermediary market where people buy it through their brokers?
Yeah, it's usually financed. They usually arrange that financing that like the city government will as an offering. So you might be able to buy it on the public market, but you can't buy it typically directly from your city. So they would maybe work with like Morgan Stanley or some investment bank, and they would like investment bankers do, they would securitize these things and put them out on the market and say, the Bellingham Public School District has a technology levy. They need $9 million, and they're issuing these bonds. And so then you could go on the public market and buy them. A lot of those bonds, the price is based on supply and demand, but what drives that really is the credit worthiness of the school district, for instance. So whether you're a school district, a company, or a government, there are credit agencies like Moody's and Standard and Poor's that will essentially rate how creditworthy you are, how likely it is that you are going to be defaulting on a loan or on a bond, not able to pay a bond. So if you're a higher risk, if there's a higher risk of you or your organization defaulting, then typically the market will demand a higher rate of return. So they'll be paying less for those bonds. And if you're more creditworthy, then the rate will not be as great because people will be willing to pay more for those bonds because there's less risk involved. So that's sort of how that works. Okay, let's move on to NPER here. NPER is just, again, the number of time periods. And one good potential use for NPER would be to say, like, if you wanted to have a certain amount of money in your bank for your retirement, how long would it take to get that based on these numbers? So let's just try to calculate that. So let's say I want $100,000 for retirement. When I retire, I want to be able to access $100,000. I gotta add one more zero there. 100,000. And let's just say I had a great uncle die and he left me $25,000 as well. I'm going to invest that right now, $25,000. So I got negative $25,000 going out, and it's going to average, let's say, 6%. I don't know why I like 6%, but I do. So 6%. So this is what I know. So the question is, how long would it take to get a $25,000 initial investment up to $100,000 for my retirement? We can use NPER to find out. So rate, 6%. We're doing this annually. This is 6% annual rate. Payment, 0. Present value is the negative $25,000 that I'm willing to invest. Future value, I want it to get to 100. So how long will that take? 23.79. So that means almost 24 years based on that negative, based on investing $25,000 right now. So I would have to wait 24 years at 6% to get to $100,000. But let's say I also, like, oh, I don't know, I'm going to put away $2,000 every year in addition to that, on top of that initial investment. If I put an additional $2,000 every year on that investment and leave everything else the same, is that going to increase or decrease the amount of time it takes me to get to 100,000? Caroline, what was that? Decrease?
Yeah, I was gonna say it was gonna decrease the time, right? Because you're gonna get to your goal faster.
Yes. So let's see how much if I add $2,000 every year, it will take it from 23.79 to 14.18 or 19 if I round out. Wow, that really decreases the amount of time it takes you to. So basically, what you're also saying is that you're adding about an extra $28,000 over the course of 14 years to that investment, but it basically takes 10 years off the amount of time that it would take you to get to $100,000. So sort of cool. So again, this is another one. If you want to, you can play around with these numbers and, maybe do some goal setting. If you do want to save a certain amount of money in a certain amount of time, this is a good way to sort of estimate what that would look like. All right, the last one, payment, and this one in particular is good for calculating things like home payments or car payments. There are some really good home payment, what are called amortization calculators, which basically just give you the entire table. If you want a home loan and you want a loan, you need a loan for $100,000, and it's going to be at 4% for 30 years. you can go to some of these calculators, mortgage calculators like bankrate.com, and it will tell you what your payment will be every month. It will also show you every month for the next however many years, 30 years, how much of that payment is principal and how much is interest. And it's really interesting to look at how things change as the interest rate changes, and as the length of time in which your loan is, because some people get like a 15-year loan if they can, for a couple of reasons. One, because you pay it off sooner, and two, because the banks, the rates that they give on 15-year loans are typically lower than, say, 20-year or 30-year loans. So if you can manage a slightly higher, or maybe a somewhat higher monthly payment, you can get a better interest rate, and you're going to be paying off, you're going to be paying more principal every month than you would if you got a longer term loan. So I'll go to that site tonight if we have time, and I'll show you. It's a cool site. I like it. They have all sorts of good things there. It's called bankrate.com. Anyway, so back to payment. So payment is going to tell you how much of a payment would be due based on these variables. So let's see, where is I don't have an example in my notes, so I'll make one up. So let's say I want to buy a house, and to buy that house, I'm going to need $200,000, a $200,000 loan, okay? So the question is, where does that $200,000 go? And I sort of always forget this, so I'm going to guess right now, and we'll see if I'm right. I think it goes in future value as a positive, in that down the road, you're going to own this $200,000 asset, so it's coming back to you. We'll see if I'm right. Present value is going to be 0 unless you're making a down payment. If you're including a down payment, let's not do that right now because it's going to complicate things. Just assuming it's a no down payment loan, which you can surprisingly still get these days. So present value is going to be 0. Number of time periods, let's say it's a 30-year loan, but because we make payments every month, we got to do this on a monthly basis. So 30 times 12 is going to be 360. That's the number of time periods in a 30-year loan. You're going to make 360 payments to Big Joe Bank before you pay that puppy off, unless you paid off early. And what is the rate? Well, right now, I think 30-year mortgages are running right around 4%, which is really, historically, it's like almost the lowest it's ever been. But it's going to be 4% on a monthly basis. So I'm going to do 0.04 divided by 12 again, so that we calculate this on a monthly basis. And so that takes it to 0.33% a month is the equivalent interest rate. So now we want to know, if I want a $200,000 loan, 30-year loan at 4% a year, or 0.33% a month, how much am I going to be paying every month? Let's see, PMT, rate, comma, NPER, comma, present value, comma, let's see if I did this right, future value, enter. 280. Does not seem right. What is that? $288? That seems quite low. What did I not do there? C24. Okay, let's try something else. There we go. So I didn't have it right. So for a loan, you want to think about it as your present value is negative $200,000. That's what you're going to essentially, you're going to owe the bank as soon as you start this loan. So negative $200,000, and you want to pay that down to 0 in 360 time periods at 0.33% a month, gives you this payment of $954.83. So that's what you would be paying on that loan every month, just for principal and interest. And then you also have to consider property taxes and insurance that they add on top of that you'll be paying every month too. But just for the loan itself, you would be paying $954.83 on that. If you take that, and let's say instead of 4%, the interest rate is now 6%, which it was fairly recently within the last 5 years. Is that going to make your payment go up or down? Yes. You've got to raise the house, raise it. Let's see. I need to practice that, by the way. Yes, $1199.10. So it goes up $250. From 4% to 6% interest, you would be paying $250 more a month for that loan. And I think real briefly, I'll quickly show you this. I can get that out of my way. I will quickly show you this website and show you how you can use this because it's pretty cool. So it's called bankrate.com. And if you go up here to the calculators, which is what geeks do when they first see a web page, if they see calculators, they're like, yeah, calculators, I'm clicking on that link. And I am. Sorry, you're getting someone who spent a lot of time on the phone today with bankers, and I'm so tired. So you can go in here, and it says, well, what kind of calculator do you want? And you're like, I want a mortgage calculator because I'm going to buy a house. And literally, look at all these mortgage calculators it has. So I'll just take the top one, mortgage calculator, includes amortization schedule, because I want to show you what an amortization schedule is. It's what geeks get excited about. So I'm going to put in the same numbers here that we just put in Excel, and hopefully, unless math has changed, these numbers will be the same that we just calculated. $200,000 mortgage, 30-year time period. It says or 360 months. And we said interest rate per year, saying 6%. So now we want to say, okay, calculate. Tell me what that means. $1199.10. Yay, Excel worked. So that's cool. But the other cool thing is now what you can do is click on the show amortization schedule. And it shows you, assuming you're starting in December, this is your payment. This is the amount of principal. That's like the amount that you're paying off of your loan. This is how much you're paying in interest. You're paying $1,000 of your $1,200 payment. Your first month, you're paying $1,000 in interest. That's what the bank makes on this loan. And go down to your second month. And this is like compounding in reverse. Your second month, you pay slightly more. You're basically paying, oh, this is very interesting how this works out. You pay $1 more, you get $1 more in principal back, and you pay $1 less in interest. And it goes down and down. So remember this, we're paying $200 in principal and $1,000 in interest when we start. When we get down here, you can go down and down and down and down, all the way to the end. So towards the end, that's reversed. And so this number here, this 1169 number, is the amount of principal that you're paying off. And every month you're only paying, at that point, you're paying $29 in interest. So it totally reverses. And that's because with a home loan or a car loan, the way these things work is you pay a fixed amount every month. And in the beginning, your interest is up here and your principal portion of your payment is down here. And it slowly reverses like this until you pay it off, until the last payment that you make, doesn't show it here because it's uneven, but the last payment you make is essentially all principal because you don't owe the bank anything anymore. And that's the reason this happens is because you owe $200,000 at the start, and as you gradually start paying it down, you owe less and less every month. So the amount that the bank calculates interest on is less and less, and so you start paying less and less interest every month until you're at the end. And on this one, the last payment that you make is $1,193 in principal and $5.97 in interest. So, yeah, so I find these things cool. When I was looking for a home loan, a refinance, I spent a lot of time looking at these tables and looking at options, and yeah, it's good stuff to look at and to understand. So, anywho, all right. Any questions about that payment or any of these other financial calculations? No. Okay, let's take a 7-minute break. Let's come back at 6:15 because I want to spend 15 minutes working on these in-class exercises, and then at 6:30, I'm going to release the optional quiz, and it's 6 questions, so hopefully 5 minutes a question. You guys can take that. So, Patty, did you say that you were still having problems accessing Native Nations Institute stuff? If you are, let me know, and maybe you can show me share your screen and I can see what's going on. Okay, so first of all, let me get the link. I'll copy the link into the window there. I think I can do this. Let's see here. Rebuilding Native Nations. Student. Okay, so copy. Control V. So that is the link. Click on that link and it should take you to a login page. And then let me know what happens. I think you can actually just click on that in the window. Oh yeah, you can. Cool. Wow, I love Zoom so much more than Canvas. Well, great. Perfect. So I'll just, how about if I email you that link directly and then you can just have that. As they say on one of my favorite shows, I love it when a plan comes together. Anybody know where that came from? You'd be embarrassed if you admit it.
Is it Columbo?
No, it's not.
My husband is obsessed with that. He's binge watched 2 years already in the last week.
Actually, I don't know. Maybe Columbo does say that, but the one I was recalling said that. I'm very embarrassed to admit this, but I did watch it when I was a young buck. It was the A-Team with Mr. T, and Hannibal would always say, "I love it when a plan comes together," after they got done exploding things and stuff. So, anyways, that's my aging comment for the day.
When I was in the Army in Alaska, we danced to Ice-T's Ice Baby. And we had those white Arctic boots on, and so we thought we were cool back then. That was 1992, I think.
Wow. Yeah, I think the A-Team for me was like an 80s experience. That was when I was procrastinating about homework in middle school and didn't want to. The A-Team just always seemed to be on with Mr. T. That was his name, Mr. T. The guy who made the Mohawk such a sensation. Well, I guess the punk rockers did that first. But.
Yeah, there was Grace Jones.
Yeah,
Grace
Oh,
Jones.
yeah. There you go. Let's see. Oops. Okay, Patty, I just emailed you in Canvas that link, so you should have that now. George, are you still out there? Guess not. You guys should be very glad that you're not taking financial accounting from me right now, because we're going through the audit, and I've had my head buried in depreciation schedules and fixed asset schedules for the last week. Probably I'll have them buried another week or so too. And so I would be going off on all sorts of tangents about fixed assets and land improvements. It all seems fun until you have to do it for 2 weeks in a row, and then it just wants to blow up a little bit. Okay. So if you go back to Canvas week 8, there should be something called in-class TGBM, I want to say. In-class time value of money calculations. So if you click on that link, you don't have to download this one if you want. It just has the questions for you, but you can if you like. So these are just some questions that we can work on using those functions that we just learned and are masters of right now. So let's just go through these one by one. Take about 3 minutes per. So and so what you need to be able to do is this is really the crucial part of the thing. Read the question and determine which of those functions will give you the answer that you need. That's like key. If you don't know that, then you can put these numbers where they go in the right place and it will give you a completely wrong number. So first of all, determine what you want to find out. Is it present value? Is it future value? Is it interest rate, number of time periods, payment? And then based on that, then you can enter the function. And I would really encourage you to enter, you can use the spreadsheet that we've been using and just enter the amounts in those cells and then just run the function based on those cells. So let's start with the first one. I'm not going to share my screen because I don't want anyone copying from me. So the first one says, you invest $3,600 per year in your IRA for retirement. If you do this for 20 years and your IRA averages 4%, how much money will you have when you retire? So just to start out on this one, which function are we going to use for this particular question?
Is it rate?
No.
Future value?
Future value, yes. How much money will you have when you retire in 20 years? So future value is the function we want to use for this one. So, all right. Give you 3 minutes. Go for it. Okay, let's see. $600 per year for retirement. 20 years. It is if in Canvas week 8, Melissa, in class time value money exercises. If you pull up that document, it has the questions on it. You can talk. You can ask me questions too, aloud. Makes me feel less alone because no one's here. I'm sitting in this big computer lab with nobody here except like 30 monitors and me. So the janitors are outside probably saying, that dude's talking to himself again.
And it's very cold too.
It is super cold out there today, yeah. Snow in the mountains, yeah. Hoping for a lot of snow this year. Okay, who's got an answer for number 1 for me? Shoot it out there. In audio, please. $3,600 every year for 20 years at 4%. What do I have at the end of that time period? Caroline?
I got 7,888. 04.
You said 7,000?
Yeah.
Mm,
No.
no.
I think I messed up on a 0 somewhere in there. I was trying to fix it. That's what I got.
No, you know what you did? Actually, so where does the $3,600 go in this equation? Which variable is that? I think you put it in present value, but that's not correct. Where should it go? Because it's 20, you're paying 36, unless I read it wrong. You invest $3,600 per year. So you do this every year for 20 years. So what would that be? It's not present value, it's
A payment?
payment, yes.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So if you put that exact same amount in payment, it should give you, what does it give you? Actually, tell me. It should give you a much larger number.
So is it 107,000 or 170?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So 107,201.08 is what you should have for that first question. Answer is your first question. And so the other thing you want to do when you're using these functions to sort of check, you just want to think about what's going on and to think about if it's a reasonable answer. Because for me, if I'm thinking I'm putting $3,600 away for 20 years at 4%, and I get a result back that says $7,000, I know something's probably not right because I contributed way more money than I contributed $72,000 over the course of 20 years, but the answer is saying I have $7,000. So that's that's a good sort of check just to think about approximately what would you have, and if it's not even in the ballpark, then you want to look at where you put your numbers. So, okay. On to number 2. Number 2, you have found a wonderful home and are interested in buying it for $250,000. If the bank is willing to give you a 30-year loan at 4%, what would be your month? Gosh, this seems pretty similar to the one that we just did in class. A little different amount. Loan at 4%, what would your monthly payment be? So we'll just do the first one at 4%. So at $250,000, and we're assuming that you're getting a loan for $250,000 at 4% for 30 years. What's your monthly payment going to be? It's nice that I had these all entered in the formulas already from those demonstrations, and now all I have to do is change the numbers around in the cells and just recalculates it for me, assuming I know what I'm putting in the cells.
Steve, I forgot if we were supposed to put something for future value or not for that.
No, this is the one where I put something for future value the first time and it didn't calculate correctly. So it's, yeah, present value only. Yeah. We all learn from my mistakes. It's better if you can always learn from someone else's mistakes than your own, but we don't always do it that way. All right, anybody have an answer for me on that one?
Every time I push enter, it won't calculate because I have the old version. I think I don't know if I have to do something different or not.
What is it? Does it give you an error? Yeah.
It's just when I push enter, it doesn't even show me nothing like the answer, like how it does yours.
Huh. But when it you put in like equals whatever and then a bracket, will it prompt you for things?
Yep. Yeah.
Huh.
So I clicked on the cells like you did, and then comma, cell, the other cell. But when I push enter, it doesn't give me the answer.
Huh.
It's like the 2007 version I'm working with, so I don't know if I have to do something different.
You might try to put a right bracket at the end and then hit enter.
I tried that too, and it still never worked.
Okay. I might need to work with you outside of class just to see if I can figure out what's going on. Sort of hard to tell.
Okay.
Whoops. I don't want to do that. Okay. Anybody have that answer for me? Andrea? Oh, but I can't hear you, Andrea. Why not? You're not muted, supposedly. No. Can you type it in the chat? Yes. Thank you. I agree. 1193.54. Perfect. So that was, you're putting negative 250,000 in present value, and the rate is 0.04 divided by 12, so you get your monthly rate, and then number of time periods is 360. So yes, thank you. All right, let's do one more, and then we'll, okay, and then we will have this little quiz. I'm not going to do the annuities because we haven't talked about that. Let's do number 4. The U.S. government is selling a 10-year bond that will pay $1,000 at maturity. That means in 10 years you'll get $1,000. If you're seeking at least a return of 5% annually, what is the maximum you would be willing to pay today for this bond? So 2 minutes to figure this one out. Number 4, 10 years, 1,000, 5%. All right, anybody have the answer there for number 4? No? Who happened to hear from? Patty? Do you have an answer for number 4? 10-year bond, $1,000 in 10 years at 5%. Okay. Anybody else want to throw an answer out there? Letitia, are you there? You have nice curtains, I see. I usually see your forehead, but I don't even see your forehead right now. So, all right, nobody. How about $613.91? That's what you'd be willing to pay today to get $1,000 in 10 years at an average rate of 5% a year. Okay, so if you'd like, you can use those other questions on there to practice, the ones we didn't go through, time value of money exercises. There will be an assignment this week very similar to these with some questions like that you'll get, so it'd be good to practice. I need to fix one thing here on the quiz and then I can release it. Okay. Just make sure I did this right. So if you refresh your Canvas under week 8, there should be a new, and this quiz is optional again, but if you want some extra points for your test, I'd recommend it. Yes, it's ready now. So go to, find it all the way at the bottom. It should be something called Apple Incorporated Financial Statements, bracket 1. So if you download that, I encourage you to download it. You don't have to, but I think it would be easier for you to, actually, I think you should download it. Into Excel, so you open Excel. If you can't open Excel, then you can just use it and view it and then answer the questions in Word. If you need to do that, that's fine. But basically, this spreadsheet has 3 different tabs, 3 different pages on it. The questions are on the last one, quiz questions. There are 6 questions. The first 4 ask you to calculate current ratio, inventory turnover ratio, return on assets, and profit margin. And then questions 5 and 6 give you some information about some competitors' numbers and ask you if it's better or worse than Apple's. And you also need to explain why it's better or worse, what that means in number 5 or 6 to do that. So you can, if you like, download this, like I said, preferably into Excel. You can put all your answers in there, save the document, and then I will create a link that will allow you to upload it by 7 o'clock or so. So that's the quiz, 6 questions. Feel free to go for it. If you have any questions, fire away. And we'll go until 7, maybe a little bit after. 7:05 at the latest. So you have about 25-30 minutes for it. Good luck. May the points be with you. I'm in a silly mood tonight. I'm going to mute myself so you don't have to listen to me talk to myself later.
Steve? I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm trying to look for it, and I'm keep on going back and forth, back and forth. And so you said under week 8.
Yeah, it should be under week 8, all the way at the almost to the bottom now. It's called Apple Inc. Financial Statements 1.
Okay, because I saw that and I was like,
Yeah, so if you,
so there's Apple Inc. financial statements and Apple financials quiz.
yeah, so do the statements. That's what you'll need, and the third tab on it is where the questions are. And then the quiz, I was just typing a message to everyone. The quiz is just the assignment where you can upload your Excel statement or your Word doc with the answers when you're done. But yeah, the information and the questions are in Apple Inc. Financial Statements 1.
Okay, so then it says quiz questions.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.